everyone, and welcome back to my course. Today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of things. We're going to talk formal languages, the rules and symbols governing them, and we're going to start breaking down sentences into a logical form. To start us off, what is a formal language and how does it help us on the LSAT? A formal language is a set of symbols and rules for making formulas out of sentences. In our case, we're using logic. This helps us on the LSAT because in order to study sentences and arguments, we need to write them in a way that helps us see how they're alike and dislike. Logic is very helpful on the LSAT because seemingly very different sentences can have the same logical form. As an example, I've got two sentences here. I have coffee and Aiden has tea, and turtles have shells and dolphins have fins. The subjects and the content of the sentences are different, but both can be broken down into a logical form we call conjunctions. In this case, they'd each be symbolized as C and T and S and F. These letters are called sentence letters. They represent simple sentences, while the ampersand represents the connection between the sentences. So what are these sentence letters and how do they work? To keep things simple, we represent simple sentences with letters or symbols. You can use any letter you'd like, but oftentimes it's easier to use a letter where you'll recognize the correspondence between the letter and the sentence you're representing. Here are a few examples. We can symbolize the sentence, "This is a truck," by using the sentence letter T. We can symbolize the sentence, "This truck has wheels," by using the sentence letter W or TW. Use whatever will help you remember what the symbol or the letter stands for. So now that we know we can represent sentences by a simple letter or symbol, how do we connect these sentences together in logic? For this, we use sentential connectives. The name isn't so important, but it is important to know that there are 5 of them. The first one is the tilde. The tilde represents a negation, which means it's not the case that X. The second one is the ampersand. The ampersand represents a conjunction, which means both X and Y. The third one is the wedge. The wedge represents a disjunction, meaning either X or Y. The fourth one is the arrow, which represents a conditional statement, which means if X, then Y. And finally, we have the double arrow, which represents a biconditional statement, which means X if and only if Y. We also have parentheses. Much like parentheses in math, these tell us which connectives belong to each other. Now that we've looked at the sentence letters and connectives, I'm going to give you a brief introduction into how we can begin to translate English sentences into logic. The method by doing this is fairly simple. First, we pair sentence letters with corresponding sentences, and then we use our connectives to create a formula. This is much like math word problems, where we take English sentences and create a formula out of it. Certain English words can mean the same thing formulaically. These are called stylistic variants. Again, the name isn't so important, but I will be showing you certain stylistic variants so you will know how to translate them when you see them. We'll start out with the negation. This one is simple. It just means it's not the case that something. So for example, we've got a sentence that says, "It's not the case that this is a truck." We break down the simple sentence, "This is a truck," and symbolize it as T. And we symbolize the "it's not the case" as a tilde. This reduces our sentence to just 2 symbols, which we refer to as not T. Some stylistic variants of the sentence would be "this is not a truck" and "a truck, this is not." Each of these can also be symbolized as not T. Next up, we have conjunctions. There will be quite a few more stylistic variants for conjunctions. here are some common forms. We have X and Y, both X and Y, X but Y, X although Y, X as well as Y, and X also Y. Here are a few sentences that all mean the same thing. This is a truck and it's a boat. This is a truck as well as a boat. This is a truck but it's also a boat. And this is a truck also it's a boat. Each of these sentences can be reduced down to just 3 symbols, T and B. Next on the list we have disjunctions. Some common English forms for disjunctions are X or Y, either X or Y, and X unless Y. Here are a couple of sentences. This is a truck or it's a boat. This is a truck unless it's a boat. Both of these sentences can be symbolized as T or B. The last 2 we have are conditional statements and biconditional statements. I'll give a brief introduction of each here, but as they can get pretty tricky, I'll devote more time to them in the next lesson. So starting with conditional statements. The easiest conditional statements are the ones that say if, then. There are others, but I always try and rephrase a sentence as an if-then before I translate it to logic. Some common words that could mean if are provided that, when, whenever, given that. I'll show you in a few sentences. If this is a truck, then it's a boat. Provided that this is a truck, it's also a boat. When this is a truck, it's a boat. Whenever this is a truck, it's a boat. All of these can be translated as if T, then B. Lastly, we have biconditionals. Common English forms of biconditionals are X, if and only if at Y, X is equivalent to Y, X is necessary and sufficient for Y. A few sentences of biconditionals would be, this is a truck if and only if it's a boat. This being a truck is equivalent to it being a boat. And this being a truck is necessary and sufficient for it to be a boat. So now that we've learned about sentence letters, connectives, and certain stylistic variants of connectives, in the next lesson we'll learn more about conditionals, biconditionals, and we'll also learn about how to combine connectives. With both of these, we'll be able to translate more complex sentences into logic.